uh, we'll talk for a while before you, but I guess I want to be respectful to your question. Was there a disappointment? Yeah, I applied an application to do a talk at the National Kitchen and Bath or KBIS Kitchen and Bath Industry Show. I did this talk a few years ago. Thought it went okay. I was overconfident that I would be selected, and for whatever reason, I didn't make the cut. So
I would suggest to you, and I'm just being presumptuous here, that the level of disappointment was connected to the level of overconfidence.
It's a combination of things. Yeah, probably. And I'm actually not disappointed I'm not doing the talk. It's such an ego thing, right? Disappointment is, yeah. So I don't want to share the part about, not being selected for this talk, so we can get talking about, cut that part out. I'm not interested in bragging about my disappointments. That's not public information.
I'll reserve poetic license on that one when I listen to the recording. Yeah. It may stay against your will.
Yeah.
No, I think disappointment is a wonderful topic. I think, to your point, pre-recording, everyone gets disappointed, and we get disappointed throughout our lives because we're not in control of everything about which we become disappointed. So
absolutely. I do feel that what you just touched on is more of the issue, that it's not having control, and it's the ego that's disappointed as much as it is the reality. Like this was not going to change. Maybe I had some hopes that it would lead to something else or this and that, but I wanted to do it. I didn't really care if I did it. I kind of did it last minute, the application, because it got extended a week. I originally didn't apply for it. And who knows, maybe I'll get a call and they'll ask me to do something else. I don't know. All I know is I've got the email, thank you, but no thank you. Right.
Yeah. It's a couple things pop into my head. There's so much disappointment in the job application process, and being a recruiter for 35 years, I had to disappoint a lot of people. I certainly elated a lot of people as well, but the disappointments, they're kind of like having to fire somebody. It's like the shittiest part of the job. I got to call this guy back.
Yeah.
He's telling me on the feedback, I nailed this thing. I know they're going to make me an offer. And they come back and, for some reason, and it runs the gamut. The reasons run the gamut. I'm just like, hey man, sorry, we didn't get this one. And you can just hear it's not audible, but you can feel the pain on the other side of the phone,
Yeah. That's right. I forgot you're involved this a lot. And I think that's what bothers me most, because it takes a lot out of me to fill an application. It takes a lot, right? Like probably to 100 times more work that maybe for you to fill an application. So I'll put a lot into that. I'll put it, if it takes everybody else maybe a couple hours, I'll spend 10 just to get it in there. And so when I hit submit, I expect it to the ROI. I want the return on my investment on that.
Well, to clarify, because not everybody has heard the episodes in which we've mentioned this challenge you have. Name it again.
There's a number of it, but if I was to wrap it up, it's dysgraphia. It's the ability to express your thoughts with the written word.
Okay. No, that's a very articulate, and that we joke about it. And I've told you how fascinating it is for me to watch you both learn and consume and articulate, and in a very positive way. I mean, I don't think you have given yourself anywhere near the credit you deserve for overcoming that in the face of everybody telling you you're stupid.
Well, that's very relevant to disappointment, because when you have a disappointment like that, then what it does, it triggers all the other negative thoughts, right? All the things, and this can go all the way back to your childhood of things that happened, or a teacher when I was 10 years old, or a former boss or a former coach. All those things come. When there's one disappointment, your mind immediately goes and tries to search out all the other ones. And then you start beating yourself up. And I think I'm speaking for myself, but I think that we all have a tendency to do that. It makes you stop and and reevaluate things. And that can be good sometimes, right? That's a self-evaluation. On the other hand, it's difficult to pick yourself up and get excited about something because that dopamine release of achievement is very, very important too. And that's the opposite, right? So it's it's challenging. So.
Yeah, I think there's a lot there. I think I mentioned to you earlier as well, watching someone else get disappointed as well is an interesting experience. And my kids and their mom in my divorce and their abandonment, that's the ultimate disappointment. And I've seen that manifest itself in their behavior over years. And there was a second rekindling of the relationship and a subsequent abandonment, which was maybe even arguably worse than the first because there was so much hope there, right? You were hopeful. You called it overconfident, but it was also partially hopeful, right?
Sure.
I'm attached to this thing, even though I don't really need it, but getting rejected blows.
Yeah, it does. Well, rejection really is what we're talking about. It's not the disappointment. It's the rejection that comes with the disappointment that can drag you down for at least a few days or if not a few weeks. And
just the way you talk about it, Jim, though, the self-awareness that you have, and you probably started this process of self-aware, self-attention, self-evaluation before you engaged anybody else in your thoughts. Mm-hmm. And then other people that you might have engaged in with those thoughts, your wife, your friends, your kids, whatever, me, will help you along with that as well. We'll give you context because we have our own experience with that same. We're like, it's like the marketing genius. Like you say something, it's like, that's me. That's exactly what's happening to me. Yeah. You know,
although I'm changing my ways about that as well. I'm sharing less with people. And I believe that that's sometimes the better way to go. I'll share it with you because it's relevant to the topic, the conversation. But I don't think there's a large benefit of sharing all your disappointments with somebody. You know, I think you have to regulate that.
I think generally speaking, the less you share with people, the happier you are.
Yep.
The less bullshit you're encouraging, the less emotion. And I struggle with
good
that.
Good advice, Mark.
I like that. I'm a hypocrite, man. I love talking, but I also like listening too. And I challenge myself almost every day. Like I was thinking of it earlier today when I was listening to our previous podcast, editing it. I'm like, dude, you're interrupting Jim too much. But it's also a combination of you pause and think, and I'm already at the next question, and I'm like, neither one of those is wrong, but an awareness of that is like, I'm literally right now saying, as soon as I stop talking, I'm going to let you say something and I'm going to let you finish to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
And that
I think we do a pretty good job. I feel the same way, but that's to me, that's a good dialogue. And we're thinking about the next thought as our opportunity comes to,
I had what's just jumped into my head. So I've told you the story about selling the second company that I was an owner of. Mm-hmm. And the impetus behind the sale was the divorce. It was such a contentious time, such a distracting time, such a difficult time that I had my children to take care of and they were being harmed. I had pressure financially on me when my assets were frozen and all these things were going on. And she was sticking her nose in my business by sending things to customers, saying bad things about my integrity. I mean, it was, you would think some of it was illegal, but when you're married, you can get away with shit in the state of Florida. At least the woman can. Mm-hmm. But boy, when we went to we went to shop the company, I was very disappointed in the behavior of one of my partners. And to the tune of just selfishness. But I was so responsible for the noise that my divorce brought to things. I didn't act on that. It didn't seem fair to me. But I was very disappointed in him, and we've subsequently fallen out of touch. I'm sure if we reconnected, that we would be easy dialogue. How's everybody? How's the kids? There's no like animosity there. It's just disappointing. It's an interesting form of it's not quite anger. It's not quite animosity. It's disappointment. And then my other partner, he was Superman, and to watch this dichotomy of behavior, it was really stunning. And then, of course, the disappointment of the whole divorce was, it took layers and layers and layers of disappointment on so many different levels. But yeah, watching other people be disappointed is a very interesting thing.
I thought it was interesting, just sharing your perspective on job applicants. And you were just earlier before the recording, you mentioned that as a recruiter, you'd be on both ends of that. And so you are. Is it timing? Is the person just wasn't good enough, or wasn't just? I don't want to get too wrapped up in the details of my little situation here. Hard to know, right? Was I just not good enough, or was there some other?
It's my job.
Other reasons you don't know about, right?
Oh yeah, and sometimes you never find out the real reason. Because the other thing is people don't like to disappoint other people. People don't like to deliver bad news. Yeah. And it's interesting. And it's in my job as a recruiter is to get as much information from the client, whether they want to hire them or they don't want to hire them, because it has to be a learning experience for everybody. It has to be a learning experience for the client. Like if you didn't hire him, why'd you even talk to him? Right. Mm-hmm. And is that my responsibility? Did I miss something? Right. But the delivery of that disappointment, I'll often not be able to tell the applicant. I honestly don't know why. I don't have visibility into the other candidates from other recruiters. I don't have visibility into the political circumstances. Maybe somebody spoke up because they saw it on the bulletin board and they promoted somebody from within. Mm-hmm. I don't know. So if I don't know, I won't say I do know, because that's just as misleading. Mm-hmm.
Have you ever just came out and said, "Hey, listen, there was somebody better than you," or "You're just not qualified"? I mean, at what point do you the
biggest disappointments are when you come in second, right? Yeah. And those are the people that say, "Oh, I nailed this thing." Well, somebody else nailed it just a tiny bit better. Mm-hmm. And my job is, well, better how? In what capacity? They were deeper knowledge technically in this particular area. They had a personality that they determined just fit better in the culture, not a good or bad thing, just better. Yeah. Sometimes it's real nuanced. And those are the hardest ones to deliver, because those are the people that think they got it, Yeah. So, and some clients are pretty good and they understand and they bring humanity to the whole process, but most don't. No. If I have a relationship, a personal relationship with the actual person to whom my candidate will go to work for, like the hiring authority, his boss, then I wouldn't have that relationship if there wasn't some humanity in it, because that's I insist on that in a relationship. Mm-hmm. And those are the kinds of people that are attracted to me, but no, some are just like, I hate this process. I just want to get it over with. And I'm not going to be, comprehensively professional about it, because it annoys me, and I got better things to do. Right. So, but that runs the gamut, that runs the gamut. I think you hit on something earlier. I think if you can develop a skill that I think both of us have, I think we can always get better and better and better at it. But it's like, okay, something that strikes me wrong, something that irritates me or disappoints me or angers me, I got to stop and think about that for a second before I bring it anywhere or go too deep or what's going on here, And you hit it. This is my ego.
Oh,
this is not ego, the disappointment. The disappointment is not that I'm not going to get us to get up on that stage and talk, maybe a tiny bit, right? Yeah. Something good, like you said, something good might have happened. The disappointment was, sorry, we picked somebody else. Mm-hmm. You weren't good. You weren't good enough. Yeah. Doesn't matter what the letter says. Doesn't matter what the words.
And that's the competitiveness. It's also something I didn't have a lot of experience with, early on in life, is other things. So I'm not used to, I'm not conditioned very well to not get what I want. And I think when you get older though, you question everything. Hey, am I becoming less relevant? In my messaging off? Is it because it's not the right message to the right market? It makes you question everything. And it's hard to know whether overreacting, or it's a true message. It's a true sign that you need to think about a different approach or what you're doing. And that's what I want the topic of disappointment to be more about, right? How do you know it's an opportunity to refine that skill, or is it a sign saying, it's time to move on and maybe do something else, take that time and energy and effort and apply it to something else. It's just hard to know. Yeah.
Well, if you believe in a higher power, and I do, and I call him God, as we've talked about before, and you and I have slightly different belief systems there. But if you believe in a higher power, like, I don't have control over everything. This isn't up to me. This is like, there's so many things going on here. And I think whether it's disappointment or any kind of other negative emotion from an experience, I think that the first thing to do is go, wait a second, stop beating yourself up. I think you even used that phrase earlier. Stop beating yourself up. That doesn't make sense if we're going to move to a solution to this condition. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think the quicker you can get there, and then start thinking about, well, what else might it be, or whom else might it be? It's you get there pretty quick the older you get, if this is something that you're committed to.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I really appreciate what you're saying there. And then I think you've said there's always that term, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. Sometimes I think that applies, not all the time, mm-hmm. But you're right. I do think you like to justify by saying, well, that means that there's going to be another opportunity, or something else maybe bigger will come from that, mm-hmm. that time, that energy that would have been applied towards that, specific event or task. And that, so it's, but what other, and we're talking about disappointment too, in others. We've touched on this before in previous episodes, but I think disappointment in people, that's another hard one, especially as time goes on. You have a lot of friends, and people just don't act the way that you think that they would based on those circumstances.
Yeah, I being disappointed in people is challenging. I was disappointed in my mom when she took her life. I'm disappointed in my sister that we don't really speak anymore. And I took both of those and thought, what part of that is my responsibility? And that's a challenging exercise, because the ego in you is like, fuck her,
Yep.
But the human in you should probably be like, yeah, I get why you say fuck her, but that's probably not the best way to, leave this, whether you get back together or you don't.
Yeah.
That's not the best way to do it, but I've done it before.
Yeah. Yeah. When should you be showing compassion, or
probably.
Like you said, are you just saying, fuck that guy, I didn't like him that much anyway, or, I'm not surprised.
You begin rationalizing
stuff like that before. Your mind jumps all over the place.
Well, you touched on competition or competitive nature, and I don't know that one of us is more competitive than the other or less. It doesn't really matter, but I consider myself very competitive, and I've always been, particularly on an athletic field of some kind, or sports ring of some kind. But I have also noticed, my daughters helped me with this as well, that over time, that competitiveness began not serving me as much. Like, and I talk about my brother, my older brother, the F-15 pilot, about this, because when he stopped flying, all of that competitive energy, which is like A++ personality, just like Navy SEAL shit, right? Mm-hmm. It's like F-15 fighter pilot. Like you step out of that plane for good, and there's nowhere else to replicate that experience, right. So I think with competitiveness, I've had to, over the years, say, okay, well, that doesn't, like, I used to compete with people driving my car. It's just
it's kind of ridiculous, right?
Yeah. It's you use this such a wonderful quality in the right place, and it gets you to awards, it gets you accolades, it gets you wins, it gets you trophies, and it gets you applause, it gets all these things. You're like, talk about dopamine, but you got to turn that knob down in certain circumstances, like when you're playing a board game with your kids.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I also think when you get older, you have to adjust that knob as well. Your you're putting pressure on yourself to have an outcome, often ego driven. I know we've touched on this before too, but we talk about the creative mind, and that's the data. I obviously have a very creative mind. That's part of the whole neurodiverse mind that comes with dysgraphia, dyslexia, all the above. But that's part of it too. That creative mind can go really high. That's where the dopamine hits. It can go very low. We talked about Anthony, is it Bourdain? That was the chef that killed himself.
Yeah.
There's Robin Williams, another one of those minds.
Yep.
They feed off that success and that release of dopamine. And then when something doesn't go, they don't have a blockbuster hit, or something doesn't go well, they go really, really low fast. And
there's
pretty common
with guys like that. And I don't know as much about Bourdain as I know about Robin Williams, but I certainly know of him and of his accolades. There's chemical imbalances going on in there too, because somebody who would actually take their life or attempt to take their life is, I believe there's part of that solution to prevent that is definitely involves some sort of chemical mix combination, because it's that severe.
Yeah.
It's so much that's so far beyond their control.
Right.
But
both of them were former drug addicts, openly admitted. Yeah. Whether it was coke or heroin or alcohol, whatever.
Like Robin Williams needed coke.
Yeah. Hey, that's what he did though. I mean, that's what a lot of some of his best materials.
I know. I remember, it makes me think of the first one. But one of the things I wanted to not forget is, so how would you recommend that you disappoint someone? If you have to bring someone bad news, what's the process that you, maybe not even consciously, but naturally go through in terms of delivering a softer message, making it less personal, considering a little bit about what the circumstances of the person you're going to disappoint are, be respectful, bring some humility to it, some love to it? I guess I just shared my process with you, but what's yours?
I really, I think it's an excellent question. Thank you for asking it. I was showing compassion, but to pick up the phone and have a conversation. Don't send them an email. Don't send them a text, and explain to them the circumstances. Say, hey, this one didn't work out. I just think that compassion, empathy is such an important part of that experience. And that's just being a good human. And that's why I appreciate what you were saying. When you say you're working with somebody, they didn't get the job, at least you're going to pick up the phone and tell them, hey, it didn't work out. We don't know exactly why, but
or sometimes we do.
Sometimes we do. Right. But
yeah, and that makes a big difference. Yeah, I think all those things. But I really appreciate your point about picking up the phone, and if possible, face to face.
Oh, even better. But so much is done. But to send out a email blast, to somebody that, and again, I'm just talking about this situation. I've had a couple others. I appreciate where you're going with this, Mark. Now I think about it, you're right. I think it's the process of applying for something, thinking that there's going to be a positive outcome. Otherwise you wouldn't apply for it. Right. And then not knowing whether you just got kicked out because you hit the wrong checkbox, or who knows what it is. There's no humanity in that. Somebody has given their time to get to that. You think you'd at least get a phone call or a personalized email, not a autoresponder email. And I think there's a lot more probably that's going on. How could you not take that personal, but you don't know what's on the other end? And this is maybe just like you said, it's a good example of the time we're in right now of electronics and humanity, humans.
Yeah, I was thinking of social media, and when I've been before I forget though, I just wrote an article yesterday on the hiring process is broken, and some of what I included in there was this horrible feedback loop that's out there between candidates and companies. It's like non-existent, or it's like impersonal, what you're talking about. Like a lot of these companies, they don't tell them anything. They hire somebody and they don't even tell all the other candidates that they're no longer in consideration. That's like the difference between like your kid dying or your kid like disappearing and never to be found again. Like it just hangs out there. It's crazy.
Yeah, it was bullshit too, right?
It is bullshit.
And I think there's a lot more of that going on.
It's the disappoint. I think it's connected to the social media in that when you make a comment online or you give advice or you tell a story or whatever, and you think that it's helpful and you think that it's interesting or it's funny maybe. Like yesterday I found somebody was talking about it on the radio and I found it, and it was the Life of Brian, Monty Python.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a movie that I particularly agreed with because it's blasphemous about religion and God, but it's funny. And this one scene, the four main guys, Cleese and the other three guys, they're dressed in these Egyptian robes and they're sitting and they're talking about one of the guys is he wants to have babies. 1979. He wants to have babies. Cleese is like, you can't have babies. You don't have a womb. And it's a 2 or 3 minute skit, and you're like, in 1979 we were making fun of this stuff, and now it's like a social epidemic, and like, how about having some fun today? It's but anyway, I strayed a bit there, but disappointment is the social media thing is, if you do that, you put something out there, and then usually the next day, sometimes immediately, you look and you go, who reacted to that?
Yeah.
If no one reacted to it, you're like, oh, fuck. Yeah. It's disappointing, and you have no idea why. And who am I to suggest that somebody should pay attention to my little comment online amidst the gazillion others? But if they comment negatively, like, remember, did I tell you that one woman called me a racist?
Yeah, you told me about that. But this also reminds me of these online applications, right? Versus I guess I did submit a video, so there was a video on this particular one, but yeah, even a video interview versus somebody calling you up and asking. A lot of this is just efficiencies. It's much more efficient to have an online form than it is to call everybody and talk to people. I don't know.
That's a topic for another conversation, because I don't know that I agree with that. But anyway, it's too much to say any more about it in this episode.
Yeah.
But it is. It's way more common than it once was.
Yeah. So, but I think that'll wrap up disappointment. I said you can go on and on about it, but well,
let's do this, Jim. Let's go. So we talked about a couple of our own disappointments. We talked about having to disappoint other people. We talked about watching other people get disappointed, perhaps that we love. And then we talked about how should you, the two things I'd really want to leave people with is, when you have to disappoint someone, how should you go about doing it? And I think it's worthy of mentioning what we both said, which is do it in person if you can, do it on a phone if you can't. Yeah. There's no other option when you disappoint someone, otherwise you're not being a good human being. Mm-hmm. Compassion. And I think an awareness, is this a colossal disappointment for an immature person, or is this just a little bit of a disappointment for an adult who has his shit together?
Yeah.
You need to be very sensitive in the one situation. You probably don't need to be too sensitive in the other, but they're both person to person communications. Right. And then the final one is, how should we handle disappointment ourselves? Right. And I think you articulated it really well, saying, I immediately started to think, wow, that's a strong emotion. What is that? Yeah. That's my ego. Yeah. Well, I don't like it when my ego drives my emotions. No. So I'm going to travel somewhere else and connect those dots. I'm going to do it quickly. I'm not going to share with too many people because I don't want my baggage dropped on everybody's shoulders. I'm going to not talk too much about it. And then I'm going to, in some capacity, surrender it because I don't have room for it and it's not that big a deal.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of, when we can wrap up on this one. You asked me about how the 14-year-old house guest that we had, right, from New Jersey. So the final words, because she likes different quotes than that. So that was cool. I think that one she liked the most was, the ones I shared with her was, don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. I think that's another one. but my last compliment to her was your superpower is your awareness, your intelligence of seeing the big picture. And the final words was, use it sparingly. And the other quality that I liked about her, she's not a complainer. And I said, and if you are a complainer, you do a great job of not vocalizing it. Nobody wants to be around a complainer.
Oh, what a great skill to not be a complainer.
Yes.
Wow. Especially at 14.
Especially at 14. And, but it doesn't mean that we don't complain, but it's the same. And I'm just agreeing with what you said about our disappointments. Don't share all your disappointments. Mm-hmm. It's all it does is just create more, and nobody feels that sorry for you. It's not, they may try to make themselves, make you feel that they care, but they've got their own disappointments. They're more interested in yours.
Yeah.
So I do like your advice not to share all your disappointments. That's why I didn't want to share this one, but I wanted to share it for the topic. But yeah, she has a nice quality about not being a complainer.
Yeah.
Because some people just, all they do is complain. And she has a nice way of either holding that in which is fine. It's okay. Hold it in. Doesn't mean you don't have complaints, but the world doesn't need to hear you bitching all the time about how wrong everything is. And America, that's become like our pastime of somehow. That's what Americans do.
Yeah.
We complain.
Victimhood. Yeah. It's a very unpleasant quality. It's some marketer, probably famous, but I can't remember who said, nobody gives a shit about you or your product. So get those right out of your head, Yeah. And no, that was a good topic, Jim. I thought I had in closing was, I don't think we're going to be disappointed with this episode.
I hope that we'll see. We'll see after you listen to it if it makes the cut. But anyway.
All right, thanks, Jim.
All right, have a great.
See you, man.
See you next week. So.
That was good.